So I just got here. I've been traveling. I left home at 11 a.m. yesterday morning, and it's now close to 9 p.m. the next day on Saudi time. It was quite an adventure, to be honest. Between my last recording and now, like quite the adventure. So um, Apparently I brought the Irish rain with me. Dubai only gets rain like once a year, and yes, that was the day I was there. And so it affected my airplane landing this morning, and then we sat on the tarmac after we were in the plane for over 2 hours, just sitting there. All the planes were backed up. And then when we took off, it was super, super bumpy. We were in the middle of a storm. I could see the lightning flashing down into Dubai. I could see it hit the ground. Yeah, it was beautiful. The lightning, the clouds, it was gorgeous. But yeah, it was a little exciting and much longer. So I didn't get here till night. And then I happened to be the last person in line for immigration and customs. I was trying to take a picture outside, do it secretly, and so I couldn't get on their Wi-Fi. I was trying to, check my address and stuff for my hotel. And one of the immigration guys I noticed that was nice to some of the other people, he gave me his hotspot, and so I connected to his hotspot on his Wi-Fi, and so I was able to do that. So I went through. I bought my visa. I got a digital visa there. It's quite expensive. It cost me $128 for a visa. It was cheaper getting it here than it was but ahead of time. It would have been a little bit more. So that's the most expensive visa I paid for this year. Americans are pretty blessed generally in most places with being able to go in without visas. So I took care of all that, picked up my luggage. I was the last one, put it all through their security check, and they wanted to open everything. So I opened everything, but everything was okay. I went through, and then the guy that I had, who let me use his hotspot, he was waiting outside and offered to give me a ride to the hotel. So I'm like, well, he's a customs guy, right? Immigration is probably safe. So I left a message for my friend in Dubai saying I'm getting in the car with this guy from the immigration who's going to drive me to my hotel, hopefully. It was a little nerve-wracking, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, either way, you're a single female getting in a vehicle, a taxi or something with somebody at night and being driven somewhere in a country that you don't know. And so we're going, and it's a little nerve-wracking. He's very nice. He's only been here 2 months. He came from his hometown. That's just not enough work, but he had a similar job there. And he offered to be my driver. I usually get a driver in most places that I go, so that I don't have to call Uber or whatever their local version of that is every day. And so I gave him the address to the hotel, though I don't usually like people to know where I'm staying. So did that, and then we drove the distance there, and then we ended up off-road in the middle of the desert, no road, no anything. And I was checking on my Google Maps too to make sure that he was following the directions, and sure enough, we were in the middle of the desert, and there's no hotel, no nothing. And so I was starting to get a little freaked out, because here I am, single female American traveler in Saudi Arabia at nighttime, with a strange Arab man, nice enough, but here I am in the middle of the desert and there's nothing there. And so it was a little nerve-wracking, to be honest. I contacted the Airbnb manager and I'm like, give me your number now. We're in the middle of the desert, there's no road here. I was a little scared. And so he gave the address, and we finally turned around several different times, which did not help my nerves at all. So I was just like, oh my goodness, where are we going? What's happening? The feeling of that nerve-wracking. Well, I mean, it is adrenaline pumping. Yeah, it's fear. It's fear. You're, as a single female traveler, those situations happen sometimes, and it brought up to my mind. I can remember one time being in Yugoslavia, in Serbia, in the middle of the war, back when I was in college. And I was going back to visit new friends that I had met in Serbia, and I promised to be there before New Year's so that we could celebrate the New Year's together. And the trains kept breaking down, and so I arrived at this train station at 2 o'clock in the morning. And train station is a nice word because it's really just like one little room for the train manager guy, and there's no station. It's not a place that you're supposed to stay at. And I'd missed my connecting train, and so my next train wasn't until I think it was 8 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And it was snowing outside because it's that time of year. So I went down and I huddled outside. I pulled out my little silver emergency blanket, the crinkly ones that feel like you're wrapping yourself in aluminum foil. Yeah, so I put on all my layers. I wrapped myself in that, and I huddled up against the wall outside in the snow. And the manager guy, he tried to call my friend at her home, and of course, she's asleep, and nobody's answering the phone at 2 in the morning, I guess. And she would have expected me to come during the day, and so would have I. But you can't do anything when the trains keep breaking down, and that's that part of the world. That's what happens. And so then at some point, I don't know, like I said, it was 2 something, this mail truck comes by. I don't know why they're delivering mail at like 2 in the morning. I have no idea. It doesn't make sense to me. And these 2 Yugoslavian guys. And so the train manager tells them the story. And they offer to take me to her town, Kruševac, and get me there. And so the train manager suggesting I go. So I go. And I get in this truck, this mail truck. And I'm sitting in between 2 Yugoslavian guys. And as we drive off into the dark, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like, here I am. At that time I was 20 years old. And I was 20. It was my first time ever traveling really on my own. And here I've gotten in this truck with 2 strange men in the middle of a war-torn country. And I'm driving off in the middle of the night. And so, thank goodness. At least I'm going on other people's kind of recommendations, or when people are, reputable. But they were very nice. They drove me to her apartment and walked up the stairs and banged on the door and waited until she came and let me in. And it all worked out great, as did the situation. Not to say that it wasn't nerve-wracking. So finally, we get here after much ado. And they take me up and show me the manager guy nobody here speaks much English at all. So, they shouldn't have to, it's their country, right? So he showed me 2 rooms, let me choose which one I wanted. And very basic. I saw a lot of workers coming in, Arab workers, Chinese workers, coming in after the shifts. My guess is they're probably sharing rooms here. And because it's cheap rent. And so, I do like to stay, how the locals stay a lot of times, but, sometimes it's nice to live it up 5-star, and then other times it's nice to see what it's like to be in a country and live, as others do. But I'll show you the room in a second. It's nothing terrible. So, but it made me even more uncomfortable here. I've got this guy that I just met. Now he's coming up and looking at the rooms with me. And so now he knows where I'm staying, and, that makes me nervous. But, like I said, it all worked out fine. I'm safe, I'm okay. But I will tell you, it was an adrenaline rush of arrival to Saudi Arabia. I was like, welcome to Saudi Arabia. Yeah, this reminds me. Yeah, it just brought to mind, our mind is an association-making mechanism. That's what the subconscious does. So when you're in a certain feeling state, that kind of fear, freaked out state that I was kind of in, it brought, a couple of scenarios to mind. One was the Yugoslavian one, and one was another one when I was in northern India, in Kashmir, up on the border of Pakistan. And I was going to go trekking up in the Himalayas. And also, there's war going on around there. And I didn't know, like in Kashmir, I mean, you would see all these military with these black things wrapped all around their faces, and like the machine guns pointed out at everybody driving around in trucks, and it was very intimidating. I don't think I'd ever really seen anything quite like that. And so then we go up and with my guide and the people who are gonna facilitate the trek. And we're driving through these checkpoints, because we're very close to the border of Pakistan. So we're driving through these military checkpoints. And someone would come from somewhere, I don't even know where they came from, and they would take my passport, and they would disappear. And I'm thinking, there's like nobody there. And I'm thinking, this is the region that like Americans get kidnapped and like ransomed and stuff. And like, I'm just like, I can't be on the news in like some young. I was a little older at this point. I had been living in Japan for maybe a year, a little under a year. So I was a little older at that point, but still it had that same kind of like what if situation. I don't usually think about all the what ifs, but in these type of situations, yeah. I mean, it's best to avoid as a single female traveler when all possible. Keep yourself safe. Arrange for pickups, as would be my traveler's tips to the way to avoid this. I was just, part of the issue was I thought I was arriving at 5:30, so I was just going to take a taxi from the airport. I'm not arriving at night. It's not a big deal. Part of the problem was that we were so delayed that I came in at night, and so now it put me into a different situation. But I mean, in general, it's always good for a single female traveler to have a ride arranged to come and pick you up and meet you at the airport, even if it costs a little bit more, and you don't have to worry about dealing with the local taxis and stuff, or take a taxi. But again, if it's at night, I've run into big problems with that. Since I'm on a story roll, let's do it. One such story, I arrived in India, in Delhi, and I arrived very late at night, probably like 11:30. And so by the time I got my stuff and was going out, it was pretty late. So I got a taxi, and I'd always like, okay, let me make sure I have a reservation for the first night at least, so I have somewhere I'm going, and that's so I had a reservation for something in town, and they knew I was coming, and I got a taxi, and then halfway there, the driver says, I don't know where it is. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know where it is? You said you knew where it was. He's like, I don't know where it is. And I said, well, then take me back to the airport. I'll find someone who does. And they said the airport's closed, which it probably was, because I don't think it was a 24-hour airport. And now it was like, again, it was like 1 a.m. And I'm like, I can't wander around Delhi in the middle of the night. Obviously, I know that's not a good thing. So I said, okay. I said, get me to a phone so I can call the hotel and we can find out where it is. And I have the number. And so they took me to a phone. I thought I was being smart. But here you go. Some tricks that you don't know until you know. So I called the number. Well, I told him so here was the thing that happened wrong. So we got to a phone and the guy asked me for the number. And so he dialed the number for me and handed me the phone. And I talked to somebody on the phone, and they told me that my room was no longer available because I was late, and they had no room for me. And so, of course, now my only option is to stay at whatever hotel this taxi driver wants to take me with. It's inside his family or friends or network or whatever it is. So I ended up having to stay where they recommended because, again, I can't wander around Delhi in the middle of the night. But then it was hard to get out of their network. They kind of had me like clamped in there. I tried to get to where I was going. They always transferred me from here to there. I couldn't meet any other foreigners. I didn't know. I couldn't get to the place of course, I didn't think the place that I had was available anymore. And so I was kind of like at their whim. And this is kind of how I ended up in Kashmir and did the whole trekking thing, was because I was in this kind of network. Later I found out that these were Kashmirians, and often they have a bad name, and I'm sure this is not all of them because you don't ever lump all people in. But in India they call them, they have snakes for tongues because they lie so much. And I couldn't have imagined. I mean, I met with a lot of lies in traveling, and you disregard things a lot. Which is why it's like, let me call and stuff. But it didn't make any sense to me. I didn't figure it out until weeks later, and I was coming back into Delhi after all that trip up in the Himalayas, and I had this whole thing. I ended up in all these places that I hadn't planned on. It was a really cool experience, and it was really great. But what I figured out, is that phone call that I made that first night never went to the hotel. I talked to them later. I actually stayed there in my last night. I had never talked to them. So they had me speak to one of their people on the phone. They had me speak to one of their network of, whatever, people that are trying to, get your money and get you in their little web of lies. And so I never talked to them, and I was like stuck in that for the entire time. And I felt pretty foolish. At that point I had traveled, probably 30 countries, and most all of them by myself, and I felt like I was a pretty seasoned traveler. I've done a lot of third world countries, but I was not prepared for that level. So, long story short, my advice to any, especially single female travelers, but anyone, to be safe, especially when you're coming in places that you don't know, I would say third world countries particularly, and have somebody pick you up from the hotel, even if it costs you a little bit more, and have a reservation for at least that first night. You can wing things after you get a layout of it, but don't arrive somewhere at night without a place to stay and without having a driver pick you up, because you could get yourself into trouble, as was represented tonight, which I lucked out. But still, traveler's tip: do that for yourself, for your peace of mind, so you don't have to go through the adrenaline rush that I just went through, and be safe about it. When I was a backpacker, when I first started out, when I was 20, there was no internet. We didn't have cell phones. And internet was there very basically. We had like a school email at that time when I was living in Spain. That was probably the extent. So, and we could use a little bit of internet, but I lost my train of thought. But, that it was a whole different style of traveling, because you didn't have, I couldn't just replace a SIM card every time I went to a new country. I couldn't go into an internet cafe and connect up. And so I would literally go and arrive places, and I'd be in the train station, because that's how I was traveling, mainly by train and ferry. And so I would arrive somewhere, sometimes late at night, and I would arrive and I would go to the payphone. I have to get some kind of coins or something. I'd go to the payphone, and I had my Lonely Planet book or my Let's Go, and I'd look up numbers for hostels and stuff, and cheap lodgings, cheap hotels, and I would call them and ask if they had room, and then I'd have to figure out how to get there. Sometimes I walked for miles, sometimes I took buses, sometimes whatever it was, because I was a poor college student living on and traveling on student loans, so I often would sleep on the trains and in the stations and things like that, and even on benches sometimes waiting for a train station to open. So yeah, that was how I used to do it. I would arrive somewhere, and then I would call and find a place, and then I would go. But nowadays we don't have to do that. As travelers, we don't have to do that. You can have your reservation booked, even if you want to stay inexpensive. You can have a driver that's going to come meet you, and then it's all it's all taken care of for you. It doesn't guarantee that you're not going to be in situations like mine, because sometimes planes are delayed, and sometimes things do happen. So just use all your mental resources. Make sure someone always knows where you're at. I let family and friends know where I was coming. I don't know that I let them know the exact hotel, but my assistant definitely knows the hotel that I'm at. And before I got in the car with that guy, I left messages for two people, and told them that I was getting in the car with an immigration official from there. So if they didn't hear from me by the time I got to the hotel, then to call. So it's always wise, not like you're assuming that something's going to happen. I wasn't assuming it was, but you want to have somebody know where you went and with whom, so that something can happen if need be. So be smart about it. Doesn't mean you have to be scared, but be smart, and then you don't get in as many. Honestly, out of like 50 plus countries, and that situation tonight brought up 2 other times when I had similar adrenaline rushes like that. Well, if I want to think about it, there's a couple more, but I'm not going to go into those stories right now. So maybe 5 off the top of my head out of 50 countries. Okay, maybe 6 as of now that I'm really thinking. But still, my point is the percentage is very low. The percentage is very, very low. And a lot of those happened when I was super young and much more ignorant and, just didn't know, what I was doing. And so being smarter and having cell phones and Wi-Fi and SIM cards and all of these things and the abilities to communicate more, this doesn't happen as much. The last time something like that happened was a very long time ago for me. So while I count these stories, it's not like a deterrent to don't travel. It's meant as, be smart. Especially as a single female, be smart. If you're going to be out at night, don't be wandering around by yourself in some weird neighborhood, just be smart. Make sure you're with people. Make sure you ask the locals where you should go, where you shouldn't go, what the prices are and all that. So it's called be smart, not be afraid. And, a lot of females, I can never do that. Well, you don't have to be afraid, but you have to be smart. It's like anywhere. Even first world country, there's places you don't walk around at night. A lot of places you don't just stroll around at night. I mean, I had a guy once in Ireland where in Killarney tried to follow me home at night, and I spotted him and I called him out on it and I made a thing. But it can happen anywhere. So you just got to be smart, not fearful, and be cautious and have people know where you're at and be with people. So that's my little rampage of the night. Welcome to Saudi Arabia. Tomorrow starts the Wellness Festival. I already met some people in line for immigration who are going to be at the Wellness Festival, so it looks like I've already met a couple of friends, and they said there might be some room for me to be able to speak. So we'll see. That may happen. So I'm going to go tomorrow and just get the lay of the land and go from there. Oh, I promised to show you my little base. I'm going to turn the camera around. It's my duty-free. So there's a burner in case I want to cook anything. I don't know, it looks a little sketchy to cook on. But basic, yeah, I mean, got air conditioning, got a closet, got a TV, smart TV, got a fridge, big mirror, hi, and bathroom, shower, and it's all pretty clean. I mean, I'll wear the slippers on the floor or my socks. I'm not going to go barefoot, but, it's definitely far from the worst. All right. So that's my ramble for tonight. I'm going to get some rest. All right. Thanks for listening, and hopefully that helps some of you.